principal of Eshenbaugh Land Company, one of the leading land brokerage firms based in Tampa, Florida. Eshenbaugh Land Company is home to 7 agents who exclusively broker land deals throughout Florida and have sold in excess of $1.5 billion in land sales. Today, I have the distinct privilege to introduce Bill Eshenbaugh, founder and president of our firm, Eshenbaugh Land Company. Bill's accomplishments over the last 30 years are extensive, including Home Builder of the Year, Land Realtor of the Year, Florida, National Land Realtor of the Year, Best Brokerage Firm, top producer by both the local Realtor Board and RLI nationally based on sales volume. His career has spanned tens of thousands of acres and over $1 billion in land sales. Bill's a strong advocate for education and RLI. He holds both the ALC designation as well as CCIM designation and has co-authored through 2 RLI courses and has taught over 2 decades to RLI students. He's in the Tampa Bay Builders Hall of Fame, the NAIOP Tampa Hall of Fame, the Florida Gulf Coast Commercial Association Realtor Hall of Fame, and was presented the Henry Blanton Lifetime Achievement Award from the Florida Gulf Coast Commercial Association of Realtors. He's on the board of the Real Estate Investment Committee, as well as a senior advisor at Urban Land Institute, Tampa, and a number of other opportunities and boards to help give back. He has scholarships in his family's name, and we're extremely excited today and appreciative of his time. Welcome, Bill.
Good morning, Ryan. Good to be here. All that Hall of Fame stuff starts to make me wonder, holy smokes, man, I don't want to screw up now, right?
Well, we hear you. Again, we appreciate your time. So let's get this started.
Sure.
Quick questions for you. How'd you get started in the land business?
I actually worked in subdivisions when I was in college doing cleanup work. And then when I came to Florida, I ended up at the home building company. And I loved the land acquisition and land development portion of what we were doing as a home builder. When I left that and started my brokerage firm, I said, man, I love this land part of it. So I've just stayed with it for over 30 years now.
Great. You began Eshenbaugh Land Company back in 1992. How did you know it was time to go out on your own versus going to work for another existing brokerage company? And what were some of the things you did to get started that you would recommend versus what were some of the things maybe that didn't work out so well that were maybe a waste of time or money if somebody's looking to start their own firm?
Your mistakes probably scar you more than your successes. But in 1992, I had the privilege of, for 2 years, running the sales center for the state of Florida for the Resolution Trust Corporation, which was the depository for all the failed savings and loans. We pretty well cleaned up a lot of the good stuff here. It was time to do something different. And I was being wooed by a couple of national firms to come join them. And what made my decision really easy, I guess, was a fellow named Bobby Bird, who was a big time residential broker. At the time, he was president of the Florida Association of Realtors as well. Came along and said, hey, how about if we partner up on something? I'll put in the money and you run the show. I've got some agents that would like to join you, do commercial, do land, whatever you all want to do. And it seemed like a pretty good deal. It was pretty low risk for me in terms of my personal capital investment. He put up the money. He was very patient in getting that started. And believe me, if you want to ask the downside, if you want to start a firm, you'll probably underestimate how much money it's going to take, especially if you're starting a land firm, because it's a long time to your payday. So you've got to figure out that overhead and how you pay for it. One of the mistakes that I made was in that process, we decided we wanted to be a general real estate commercial firm. So we were going to do leasing, management, and all forms of brokerage. And that put us in a slot where we're doing a lot of $200,000 to $500,000 little office and industrial deals. We're doing 1,000, 2,000 square foot leases. And I found I wasn't very good at it. I didn't like it. In fact, I probably would categorize it today that I hated it. And so after 3 years of that, we had to remake the firm and said, look, we're going to go back and we're going to reset the wheel here. We're going to focus on land. Some of you agents don't want to do that. That's great. We'll give you 3 months to kind of figure out where you're going and what listings you can take or not take. And I'm going to figure out how I'm going to go and try to make a living in the land business. So it was a false start, and we weren't having success. We weren't having much fun. And sometimes you got to stop and go, wow, I don't want to do this rest of my life. And that was one of my crossroads in 1995, 3 years in.
Oh, I think you made a very wise decision in that. Obviously, you've been successful. Your primary business is transitional land, converting land from agricultural to the development path in Florida, which has been prevalent in that time frame. What are some of the key items that some folks for RLI could take into account if they wanted to get into that kind of specialty, not just selling ag land to ag land? What are some of the things they should know or emulate about your practice going into transitional?
I think transitional land may present more challenges on each transaction than almost any other kind of real estate. If you go out and sell a shopping center, you know your zoning, you know your utilities, and all those kinds of things. If you go sell a house, you know the same. If you go out to sell a piece of land, holy smokes, man, you've got 100 different environmental things that can kill your deal. You've got zoning and neighbors, and utilities and demands and all sort of things. So I think the best thing I found out a long time ago is take a blank tablet with me and a business card to go call on builders and listen to what they needed or what they wanted to do, where they wanted to go, where they needed to be in the marketplace, because they understand the market probably as well as anybody. They know where their buyers want to go, and listen to them, and then go find that piece of dirt and then go down to the courthouse in those days and figure out the zoning, figure out your utilities, and come back to them and say, look, you can probably get this rezoned in 6 to 8 months back in those days, and this might make sense. So understanding their need and not just trying to sell them something I had on the shelf, I think was the big difference of getting successful with it. And there were a couple of big national builders that didn't have anybody calling on. They were tough to deal with. A lot of people were scared to death of them, but I figured I'll go in and figure out if they'll pay me, first of all. And that's always a key thing in this land business, who's going to pay me and what their needs were. And I was able to get a few deals done with US Home at the time. They were the big bear in the woods in terms of volume. They were also the meanest bear in the woods, and I was able to cozy up to them and not get clawed to death. You like that one?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's always interesting to hear your perspective. We're seeing a huge paradigm shift with what's happening with COVID. You continue year over year to be a top producer nationally. With what we're seeing with COVID and the rapid changing technology, how is the industry changing, and what are you doing to stay on top of those changes?
Well, over my career, the industry's changed dramatically. I actually sold a property in 1994, and then when the principal passed away, the family came back to me here in, I think it was 2014 or 2015, and they showed me my package from 1994. I'm pretty sure your son Ronan at 6 could create a better package today with his iPad than I did back then. Mine was a 7-Eleven map and cut and paste. But so I think that the technological shift that has occurred in access to information, the ability to go online with all of the programs that are available today to look at mapping, to look at public records, research, look at comparables, and a lot of the stuff that you and I've talked about. We pay over $100,000 a year here just for some of those services with marketing and research that we're doing with our firm have changed dramatically. When COVID hit in March and we all went home and sat at home, you and I talked several times on the phone, but it was like, wow, what is going on here? You and I were together back in 2008 when it stopped, crashed and burned on March 31st of that year. We never did another deal. Everything else got terminated. So as we were sitting around in the spring of this year looking at going, people aren't terminating. They're extending for 90 days or something on their contracts, but they generally were not terminating. So that was different. And we had to figure out with our builders what we'd do next. And I think what we were able to do with our webinars, I look back at it, we did one 15th of each month starting in April, which are midst, the height or the depth of COVID probably for us. But we did them in April, May, June, all the way through October with guest panelists on there. That helped us understand the market better. What were our builders seeing? We were kind of excited when you had a builder on there in May and June reporting they were making sales again, that they had figured out virtually how to sell a home, walk through on virtually, that some of them were reporting sales that they never saw the buyer. The buyer was coming from New York or Philadelphia or somewhere, finding it online, walking through online, and then all of their COVID compliance out in the fields to separate the tradesmen and get the inspectors in and out of the houses. It was pretty encouraging. But I would be the first to tell you, I thought on April 15th, our year was over, that you'd be out in your boat and I'd be fly fishing if we could keep our company doors open throughout the rest of the year, that we were not going to see another sale maybe for a year, but who knew, So being able to kind of think it through, work it through. And I guess my best advice in something else that you and I talked about is don't give up. and do something every day. As you know, I sat down every morning at 7 o'clock on my computer during COVID, and I went through and sent at least 200 emails every day to somebody in the database. Just started with A, I got as far as D. When I got to D, I thought this was discouraging. There's so many D's and E's in our alphabet. So I went to Z and worked my way back to N or something. But I would do 200 a day at least, sending out emails to people in the database, and we got responses. 20% of them are no longer where they used to be, so we cleaned up our database, or they'd gone somewhere else, so we got new contact information on them. Or I just got something back saying, hey, take care of yourself, dog. We need to talk to you when things are over, when things get better again, call me. So it was a good exercise for me. And a lot of people were glad to hear from us and just kept our name alive there during the 60 or 90 days that I did all that.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a great point. I've been fortunate enough to be with you for, I guess, 16 years now, going on 17, working side by side with you daily. I remember 2008 when I thought, the world was over, pretty discouraged that I, being a 25-year-old and just getting into the business, how brutal it was. And you said, stick with it, just show up every day, keep working, keep building your craft. It's a great time to get a focus and put it together. And in the next couple of years, you'll thrive because all your competitors are taking time off. And that was key. And obviously it has been worked for us. And you've now seen, I don't know, 4 or 5 cycles. And obviously that's what makes you successful. You don't stop. So speaking of that, at your success level, what keeps you driven, Bill? You don't have to be here every day. You got plenty of money. What keeps you driven to motivate the team during the good times and bad?
Well, I've hardly ever met anybody who said I got enough money, but a few people. Money is a measure of your success and ability to stay in a game, I guess. Yeah, I could go home today and never come back and probably not starve to death. But I like the thrill of the hunt. You and I lost one this morning where we did a very serious proposal. We thought we were in first place, found out we were in second place, and that doesn't pay much. The bridesmaids don't even get a bouquet in this business. I like winning. I like serving clients. I like the success of the deal. I like being part of it. And I didn't like sitting at home in April and May with no interaction and no contracts going on and not much happening. Love my wife. She's a great retired publisher, but it's not where I want to be yet. I don't want to sit on the porch and I've got horses. I've got things to entertain me, but I still enjoy this business and I enjoy teaching. And as you know, we've had a couple of new associates here. I'm really looking forward to bringing them on and leaving the land business a better place than what I found it.
We have a running joke in our office that, Bill didn't want to retire a day before I did because I always said I wanted to retire early. But yeah, I would concur with that. After sitting home for a couple of weeks to COVID, I was anxious to get back to work and thought, yeah, I'll probably work a little bit longer. This retirement stuff is not as exciting as maybe it sounds. You're a big believer in networking. You kind of ran that home with me that you got to get out in the community. You've got to get educated. You've got to meet people, and that success drives success. Why do you encourage that philosophy? And how have you been able to do it now with COVID? That's basically canceled all outing events for the last year.
Yeah, that was a big downer for me not to be able to go to some of those deals. As you know, I still go to 2 or 3 meetings a week with the industry type meetings, with whether it's NAIOP or the Builders Association, that kind of thing, because I'm a big believer. Nothing bad has ever happened to me. Nobody's ever thrown a drink on me or punched me at a builders meeting, but I have come home with a new card, 2 new cards, 3 new cards of contacts of some kind. And I learned back in my early days of working in both my ALC and my CCIM that I needed a database. And it starts with 1 card. You put in the second card, you put in the third card. Now we're 17 or 18,000 names in our database. We got those the hard way. We earned them. And we have contacts who make our phone ring. And you make our phone ring, something good might happen to us. So I just believe in continuing to work that network hard. And I found that not only with the Builders Association, NAIOP, but with RLI, statewide, nationally, and the CCIM network, statewide, nationally, all continue to me to be very productive. And I was on an installation banquet yesterday with the local commercial broker association, FIGCAR, installing, and they had a couple of the old dogs that were around with me back in 1991 or 92 when we actually formed the first commercial overlay board in the state of Florida. We're going, wow, where did that 30 years go? It's flew by, but we're so happy to see the diversity of both youth and the other kinds of diversity, and particularly a lot of women now involved in the board here in Tampa, that commercial board. So it's just great to see that transition, that change, that growth that's coming.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that database being valuable. We know it definitely is. Who are some of the key folks that land brokers should get to know to help them expand their business? I mean, what resources can they use, and how can they meet those folks to help them that maybe aren't other brokers?
But, I took the approach that there are a lot of people who know a lot about what's going on in this business who are not competition, but they're the engineers, the planners, the appraisers, the attorneys who do zoning. In our market, we're a big market here, so there are a number of firms in those arenas. And I found, appraisers they have a love-hate relationship with brokers, I guess. They know that they'd like to call the brokers to confirm sales and get information, but they hate the fact that they got to call a broker who probably won't call them back. And I took the opposite approach. I thought, you know what? If I call that appraiser back, he's going to be very happy that he or she's going to be very happy I called. First of all, they're going to be willing to share 4 or 5 sales they've made. And just the fact that we are cooperative with them, and you heard me preach this when you came on board, call them back. Call your wife first if you have a spouse first. Newspaper reporter maybe second because they're on a real tight deadline, and appraiser third. Those ought to be high priority calls at the end of every day because they have a lot of information. And so we found that by cultivating those groups, we've been able to get a lot of business. It's just driven to us when somebody new comes to town, they meet with an engineer and say, well, who's the best apartment broker in town? I hope our name comes up. I hope it comes up first on the list, but certainly in the top 2 or 3 that they recommend. One of the things that we did when you joined me, and after a couple of years with a couple other people new here, is I realized there was kind of a gap because a lot of people got frozen out of this business with the big downturn of '08. So we had your young generation and my senior generation, and you all the young people didn't know a lot of us, and we didn't know a lot of you. So we started doing campfire lunches where we literally brought in a campfire, brought in typically what you might find around a campfire with ribs and beans and corn and iced sweet tea, South, good old South stuff. And each person went around the table and did a little introduction so that I got to know who you were and you got to know who they were, the senior leaders of an engineering firm or a law firm and vice versa. And I think that really helped us bridge the gap between generations and helped us find reasons to go meet with those other professionals.
I mean, you have done so many deals and come up with so many ways to network. It's unbelievable, Bill. I mean, our firm's closing. I think we did over 63 deals last year alone. We're closing more than 1 a week. How do you keep all these straight, first of all? And maybe talk about maybe your proudest deal and maybe one that you lost and what you can do to change that, because everyone's got those tough ones. So,
wow. Well, let's see. I think one of my proudest deals was downtown Tampa. I had a tough client who owned a piece of land on the waterfront, very, very rigid in what he thought it was worth. And the market wasn't there. We were not ready for an office building. It was the wrong side of the river for the condo projects that were starting to come along. The apartment market wasn't very hot. The hotel market was already saturated. And the mayor called me one day and said he'd like to buy it. The only problem was he said he didn't have any money. Well, that's a problem for anybody. It was an $8 million property. And I was able to put together.
What year is this, Bill?
This was probably 1993 or 4. We're just coming out of the recovery of the crash of savings and loans. And I had done a deal when I worked for the RTC with the Trust for Public Lands and a great guy named Greg Chelius. It was his first deal when he went to work for Trust of Public Lands. And it was down in Key West. And we made that work. But the Trust for Public Lands would come in with money to help a city or government agency buy a property. And then 2 or 3 years later, when that city could maybe find federal money or state money somewhere along the line, the trust would make a little profit for doing it. And it ended up creating land in the public interest. And in Tampa, this one ended up, we managed to structure an $8 million deal. Trust for Public Land came in. Mayor Greco was happy. We closed it. And then the next mayor came along and built a history museum on the site. So every time I go there, I feel good that I help do something for future generations to be able to enjoy this history museum on that site. It celebrates the history of Florida and the history of Tampa. and everything from the cracker cattle and 5 generations or 5 centuries of cattle, actually, all the way up to today's modern airport and so forth that we did here.
Great. And what about the one that you wish you could have changed something to make it happen that didn't?
Well, there's a lot of them that got away. You and I worked on one that I wish we'd have done. That was Two Rivers Ranch. We had that under contract once, and our client, for whatever reasons, decided to drop it. But it came back around, and we were there in the hunt. I keep asking myself, what more could I have done to get in the hunt on that one and stay in the hunt? We didn't get it. And it's going to be an $80-some million deal that closes maybe this year or next year. So it's kind of haunts you a little bit that, where did we go wrong? I get more bothered by the ones I lost, I think, than remembering the ones I did.
Great. You have stayed involved with RLI for years. Over the 30 plus years that you've been part of RLI, what has it offered you? What kind of value does it bring for somebody that's out there maybe considering joining RLI?
I'll tell you, I used to go to the national meetings when the National Association of Realtors would have 3 meetings a year. And so you felt like you were always going to meetings. You went to one in May up in DC, and then maybe one in November in San Francisco, and then one in January in Hawaii or someplace. They're all great places. But you imagine today giving up 3 weeks out of your life to go to just the meetings, it would be hard to believe. But we did that. And when I got there, and I originally was trying to figure out what was best for me. Should I be a CCIM? Should I be an ALC? And I tell you what, every time I went, I said, well, I really like those ROI people. They're soul of the earth. They've got integrity, and they're good folks, and they know what they're doing, and they really warmly welcome you into the deal. So I've got friendships within RLI that go back close to 30 years, I guess. And I just really gravitated to them at every one of the national meetings I went to. I did do both my ALC and CCIM together, I guess 25 years ago, because last year I got a plaque from CCIM congratulating me on 25 years as a designee there. But I just found that what ROI was teaching and espousing was great, but the friendships are great. I've gone hunting with Bob Turner and his duck blinds, and go up to Tennessee and drive over to Arkansas to his duck ranch. And I've gone out with Michael Landreth. I celebrated New Year's Eve in the millennial in 2000 or 1999, actually, with he and his now deceased wife, bless her soul. But we just made those kinds of friendships that have stayed there through thick and thin.
History has a way of repeating itself, Bill. I mean, you are a big history buff, and I think you're actually writing a book on Civil War. Talk about that. I mean, what's something that we should be doing as the young generation to know about history that we could use it for our business going forward?
Well, it does repeat itself, and I am writing it's a fictional novel based loosely on some of my relatives who spent 3 years riding in the cavalry down through West Virginia and the Virginia Valley and so forth. But these things change, and we all went through a new administration being sworn in a couple weeks ago. We've been there and seen that with Jimmy Carter. We saw it with, oh my God, the world's come to an end with Bill Clinton. And now we've got Joe Biden, and we worry about what that means to our business with capital gains and a lot of other things. Just, you need to be aware there will probably be some dramatic changes. Housing may get a big shot in the arm. It has a couple of times historically. And if you look at the stocks of companies like Lennar, D.R. Horton, they're doing great. And I think they're going to be doing better under some of the programs that might be coming out. So be prepared for it. Be watching on the political side what might be good for your business. I mean, there are some things that are going to be bad probably for us, but watch it, be careful, plan for it as much as you can, and put some money away. You and I saw that in 2008. Holy smokes, man. Our revenue stopped March 31st that year. Never saw another dime in real estate commissions the rest of the year. Hadn't quite planned on that when we finished 2007, which was a pretty good year. So history will repeat. These cycles go up, these cycles go down. When the cycles go down, they're tough on a land person until you get to the bottom. Once you're at the bottom and it starts to sort out, there are cycles again that say there's opportunity, because land has the opportunity for having maybe the greatest appreciation in a good market and maybe the biggest compression or downward cycle in a bad market. And land is probably the only real estate asset that typically could even go negative in value if it has burdens with community development district debt or other obligations to it. it might not be worth anything. You and I looked at some lots back in '08 that a builder wanted to give us, but they were burdened with $25,000 or $30,000 worth of development debt, community bonds for 30 years. I don't know if they'd be worth today what they wanted, what it would take to pay that debt off. So we'd have been paying 10 years worth of debt, 10 years worth of taxes, and still be sitting there with those lots. So land can go negative. That's a hard concept. Land can have really big appreciation.
Great. I want to change this question answer up now. I want to go with a little rapid fire. Let's hit you with a couple of quick questions.
All right.
Wrapping this up and kind of give us this is going to peel back the onion about you a little bit personally. So 1 word, 2 word answers, or, a quick little response would be great. Here we go. What is one job or skill that you have that people may not know about you or know that you did prior to getting in the land business?
Oh, a job or a skill? I can drive a 15-speed a tractor trailer at 70 miles an hour and keep it between the lanes.
Bill did run a trucking company in Pennsylvania, president of the trucking company for a decade or so. Forgot that. That's a good one. Absolutely.
You like that?
What's one of the first things you do when you wake up in the morning before you check those emails and start pounding your emails at 5 a.m.? What are you doing?
Well, first thing, grab a coffee and head out to the barn. I got 3 horses. I run them in and feed them, check them over, and turn them out and come back in. And I try to email my broker friends just to let them know I'm up and working and respond to their afternoon or evening inquiries. Hey, the dog is working. What are you doing?
That's great. Websites. Is there a certain website you go to kind of every day for pleasure or business?
Well, I've learned to fall in love just with Google because my wife will ask me a question. I go, oh, wait a minute. I just grab the answer for her. So how old is Tom Brady? Oh, there it is. So I've loved history and I love trivia, but Google is my best friend in that regard.
That's like Siri. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about books? Are you reading any new books, or do you read the newspaper every day, or where do you get your news from?
Well, my newspaper went to twice a week, hard copy, and daily online. And my wife loves to, while I'm out at the barn, loves to give me the headlines on real estate out of the Tampa Bay Times. So she sort of short-circuited me on that one a little bit. I've got a couple of books. Actually, I don't even know the names of them right now. They got as gifts for Christmas. I've yet to pick up. But one of them is a light history book on the cattle operations out in Nevada from pre-Civil War to today. It's given to me by a friend who lives out there. I met her on a trail ride 10 years ago, I guess, out there. So she sent it to me. She said, you're going to love this. I haven't read it yet. But yeah, kind of looking forward to doing that. I read a lot of periodicals, Civil War Times, Wild Wild West Days, those kind of things that come every month. So I read those, religiously read those.
Great. If you could be anything in the world other than a land broker, what would you have been?
Oh, I'd love to have won the 24 Hours of Le Mans in sports car.
See, I thought you were going to say a cowboy, or a school teacher, and a race car driver. That makes sense.
I love to be able to get out of that car and put on a pair of boots and a big Western hat, so a big combination. Paul Newman or somebody,
Oh, Burt Reynolds right here.
Yeah, Burt Reynolds.
What's one of the things you struggle with? I mean, you're so successful in everything. What's something that gives you a hard time?
Keeping up with technology today, and even like Siri. I don't understand Siri, and I'm not sure I want Siri in my house, but just keeping up with some of the technology and watching you guys go, oh my God, I'm glad I got this young team here in the office that's doing it. That can help me once in a while because it's a whirlwind and it's scary.
If we got in your car right now, what music or what's on the radio?
Willie Nelson.
Willie Nelson. What would you tell somebody just entering this business?
40 hours a week's a part-time job.
Where did you go to college and how did it impact your career?
I went to Penn State. I had a cousin who was 19 years older than me. It was my mentor. I was all set to be a history teacher and go off, and I'd have been retired now for 15 years if I'd have done that. But he asked me if I knew what a history teacher made. And then he pointed out to me back in the day that wasn't very much, so like $3,500 a year. And he steered me and helped me along with my dad coming in the background, coaching to get me to think about Penn State and a career in finance, which I majored in. And then he encouraged me because he was a developer and builder to take as many real estate courses as I could. So he was a huge mentor. I miss him now. He passed away a couple of years ago, but my whole life, he was a mentor to me. And, yeah, you're sitting there in college. I never had any money. So a check would show up with $50 in it. Or he called me one day and said, you need to go down to Belford's Jewelry. Your ring is ready. And I said, well, why didn't you just send me the money? He said, because you'd have gone and drank beer with it. You wouldn't have gotten a ring. I want you to have a college ring, you know? So good mentor and just a lot of help along the way. But I still have emails almost every day from 5 or 6 of my fraternity brothers. Email has been our best friend to stay in touch, be in touch, and we exchange jokes and they watch football and criticize, Franklin and the whole coaching staff at Penn State, but they're good friends and we see each other once in a long time.
Great. Last question here before we let you go. What's the best place you've ever traveled, and what's a place that you haven't been to that you'd still like to see?
We took a cruise around the Mediterranean, and we had on the itinerary Dubrovnik in Croatia. I don't know if I want to go to Dubrovnik. We landed there, and it's a little walled city with no vehicles. We would love to go back there and spend the summer. Just a beautiful city right on the Mediterranean. So loved it. We had a cruise schedule where I want to go, and it got canceled due to COVID, but it was started in Sweden, went over to Russia and back to Germany and then to Norway with a train trip across Norway with one of those scenic cars. I want to do that if the world ever gets safe to travel again. Because my appetite really got up for that travel, and then it got canceled on us.
Well, hopefully you got your money back in the cruise ship.
Oh yeah.
Survives.
I'll give Viking a plug. The 100% of our money came back, and it went on to my American Express when I got it back in my checking account. So I was afraid Viking would go bankrupt, Yeah. So yeah.
Got it. Well, Bill, we truly appreciate your time. Thank you so much for the insight. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to visit thedirtdog.com and call Bill or myself. We're happy to provide any knowledge or advice we can to any RLI members.
I have to say to all the RLI people, make it work for you. It will really be a plus as your career goes forward with the friendships you make and the quality of people you meet at RLI, lifelong friends.
And with that, thank you.
My pleasure.